Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are based. My name is Cyrus, and I'm one of the creators of Tea, Milk, Two Sugars. That's how we like our cup of tea. Tea, milk, two sugars. Oh, yummy. Right. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that is a little bit a touchy subject. People avoid it as much as they can. Um, but it always affects us, whether we avoid it or we don't. Are we raising honest children or careful liars? Um, let's hear about Paulette first. I have a few things to add, right? But let's hear from Paulette Hallam first. She's the um, uh, very generous creator of Jack and Walter trilogy. Here's Paulette Hallam. Good afternoon to you, Paulette.
Good afternoon.
How's your Sunday going? How's it been so far?
It's been very busy, non-stop, but it's okay because it's all been good, so all positive.
Okay. So, well, for someone such as yourself who spends at least 8, 9 hours a day in front of a camera, giving advice on multiple platforms, including TikTok and LinkedIn, um, parenting is a very important thing, right? Um, I know you predominantly give advice about children's fears, children's psychology, and you can't talk about children without be talking about parenting, right? So they go
Of
hand in
course.
hand, right? So um, it's like when you talk about English seaside towns, when you talk about fish and chips, you can't not talk about seagulls, right? So um, and if you know, you know, right? So parenting is a very important part of the equation, and we all moan about children not behaving, and I guess for the sake of the having a balanced conversation, we should focus on the parents as well a little bit, right? So, Paulette, please introduce yourself and tell us what is it that you do, and we'll dive right into our um, controversial subject today.
And it is controversial. I'm Paulette Hallam. I was very much in the corporate sector, went all the way to the glass ceiling, as they say, and then retired, left there. Um, Due to my ill health, but also my son's mental health, that got me involved in an awful lot of reading and understanding. And then through many, many years of work, I became a fully qualified counsellor. So I call myself a wellness counsellor as opposed to a therapist or a counsellor. And that's because I will go from parent to child and back to adult all the way through. But I also specialize in autism and SEND and all the ND because they're the areas that I specifically focused on. But this particular topic is very touchy, very scary. Not scary to talk about to me or to Cyrus, but scary for parents to hear that they're doing it wrong. Because we're not trying to say you're doing it wrong. What we're trying to say to you today is there may be a different way. And you don't know what you don't know. And that's one of the biggest lessons I can give you is you don't know what you don't know. Back to you, Cyrus.
Paulette, could you please expand on this subject quickly as well? Sometimes parents feel offended when you give them advice on how to be better parents, right? Um, in reality, they should be grateful if someone gives them advice. Obviously, There's time and place for that. And maybe not publicly. And when you give them advice, they should be grateful, because at the end of the day, who's going to benefit from it? Both the parent and their child, right? So some parents are very set in their ways and very strict in the things they believe and the things they know. You just something, you just said something um, really beautiful. You said you don't know what you don't know. So now my question is, what if a parent thinks their method is fantastic and their method is perfect, and there's nothing else they can improve? That is a concern. If somebody thinks like that, they need a lot of development. But what is your take when a parent resists doing the right thing or improving their methods?
9 times out of 10, the reason they're sitting in front of me is because there's an issue. So either the child is misbehaving or doing something they don't understand, or has gone off the deep end at a certain topic at school, or has walked out and disappeared and just walked off the premises, or, there could be lots of like catalysts for the conversation, which is then it's not about you, it's about them. And if it's about them, it's about what about them and what is going through their minds. It's not about what you think is going through their mind, it's what's actually going through their mind. So I will have a conversation with the child, then I have a conversation with the parent, and then I have a conversation with everybody. And you see that they're two very different conversations that I've had. And then when I pull all the information together and I say, look, neither of you are wrong, but you need to understand that this person thinks this and this person thinks that. And you know what? You think that, you know, hot potatoes aren't hot, and you think hot potatoes are cold. And the problem we have is they are opposing views, but we need to come to a place in the middle where we both understand what honesty is, what boundaries are, and what respect is. And if we can't get there, we're going to have this ongoing issue, and it's going to go on all the way through your childhood until you're 18 and leave home. And then you're going to go off and be an adult that is always going to resist rules. And that's going to get you into prison. So if that's what you want, and I don't do it in a nasty way, I'm not speaking, I've not got my raised voice, I've not got an anger against anybody, or I'm not showing any um, sort of favoritism to the parent or the child. I'm just saying to the young person, you're on a trajectory of trouble, and we want to get you back on the if you like, the railroads. If you imagine a train on track, we are coming so far off the track that we're going to crash. I need to get you back on the track, and it's going to hurt a bit, but you're going to have to do it. And you're going to have to move a bit your rules, and you're going to have to move a bit with what you do. And somewhere between the two, we get the track sorted. And the track might have to move a little bit to the left or move a little bit to the right, but we will find that track. And this is where parents really need to understand. And this is what today is all about. Team Milk Two Sugars is not about slapping anybody's wrist. We're here to support, to advise, and to hopefully give some useful information. That's it in a nutshell.
Paulette, I hear raising kids with ADHD is very easy, and you've had a really easy road ahead of you raising your child. Is that true?
Oh gosh, yeah. No. No. Um,
No.
no. Ben has autism, ND autism, they call it. But I have a foster brother with ADHD. I've got ADHD in my foster family, and I'm very familiar with it. I know how difficult it can be, and how it's like shiny thing, shiny thing, shiny thing, shiny thing. And it's like attention span over here, shiny thing. And you're like dragging them, kicking and screaming back to whatever it is you're trying to get focus on. And really, medication seems to be, in most cases, the answer for everybody, in order for that mind to be singularly focused. I believe that you can actually retrain the mind. That's not controversial. That's something that I've been taught, and something that a lot of people believe, that you shouldn't just medicate people to the point of they're almost zombies. But we have to be aware that any child with any special educational needs will need a different trajectory, a different rail track to somebody who doesn't have. And that's all I will say about that at this stage. I think it's just understanding that there might be a different track. That's all. There's nothing wrong. It's just a different track. Put them on the right track and they'll fly. Okay? But put them on the wrong track and they'll fall off and they'll crash and they'll burn. And unfortunately, there are far too many children who are in that boat. And
Yeah.
that's really sad.
So yes, that's how things are at the moment, and in my view, that's how things have always been, right? Because what comes around goes around, like, and as they say, nothing new happens under the blue sky. So the problems you have um, today are the problems that parents may have had thousands of years ago, and they will have thousands of years from now. So that is the generational gap between the two generations, and the clash of personalities, clash of interests, right? And also um, various levels of narcissism, and the, 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 because the reasons are because of the multitude of reasons, it's so very difficult to pinpoint what the actual problem, um, what causes the problem. That's why it is not easy to solve the problem, right? So parents are constantly playing whack-a-mole with kids' problems. You solve one problem, a psychological problem, a mental one starts. You solve a mental issue, a educational one
Physical.
starts, a physical one starts. Okay, so a parent is like firefighter um, playing whack-a-moles, only if the whack-a-moles were on fire. I think I'll put it that way, right? So you
Yeah.
constantly you putting the
Yeah.
fire out, and uh, excuse my terrible sound effect there, but you you try to solve one problem after another. We are here, me and Paulette are here, guys. We are here to give you a few tips to make it easier. Okay, at the end of the day, you're doing the hard work. Okay, and whatever you do or however you do it, you're the one who's going to be benefiting from or suffering with the consequences, right? So we are tweaking the consequences, right? And in your favor, of course. So here's a few things we could focus on in our journey of parenting, especially with kids who need more needs, who have more needs than average kid, or have they need help in special ways. Okay,
Yeah. Additional
so
needs, we call it.
additional needs, yeah. So the kids who have more specialized uh, requirements, right? So, um, so Tea Milk to Sugars is a social affairs kind of podcast. Okay, and we're here to share what we know and how we feel. Please go ahead and tell us how you feel about things. Go to the comments wherever you watching this show or listening to this show. Tell us what you think. We would love to hear your um, view on the matter as well, and not just on this episode, on every episode that we are releasing. Please share with us what you think. Um, are we raising honest children or careful liars? The first question out of the um, um, most Googled questions that parents are asking these days is the purpose of parenting to teach obedience or self regulation? Some people say one, some people say the other. Some people are of the opinion that it's actually both. So, Paulette, you're the expert. What is your take on it, please? Please share with us.
Um, Self-regulation is the long-term goal. Okay. What you got to think about is nice children probably end up being nice adults. Children who have issues and problems and come off the rails, as we've spoken about, they come off the tracks, as we say, um, maybe need a bit of assistance, and that could be with obedience in the short term. But children eventually need to make good decisions. They need to be able to be their own authority, and they need to be able to make a decision on the hoof, and they need to always try to use what I call the moral compass. So they should be able to work to a view where they say, I know right from wrong. I know which direction is right, which direction is wrong. If I take the wrong decision and I take the wrong course of action, then on my head be it. I am making that decision and that's down to me. So I think what we're really trying to say is that self regulation is all about teaching obedience, but obedience is almost like we talk about a dog, don't we on the floor? It's that kind of level of obedience. It's if I say jump, it's like the army. When they say jump, you don't say, I don't feel like jumping. They say jump, you sort of say how high. You don't say, I'm going to put my rifle to the left if everyone else is putting their rifle to the right because you've been told to do it a certain way. That's kind of obedience training. And what we're trying to talk about is self regulation, which is where they know to put the rifle to the right because that's the right place for it to sit. And that's where it works. It works best over there. So I think that's what we're trying to talk about here is this self-regulation and the ability to use the obedience they've been taught for the long-term goal, which is self-regulation to know right from wrong. Back to you.
Thank you. So you are of the view that is self-regulation, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. And is there any element of teaching them obedience as well? Because um,
Yes.
parenting, because later on they go to the army, they go to the society. Kids go to the society, join a university, join um, um, clubs. They go out. They have to have some sort of um, um, adaptability levels. They have to possess some sort of social adaptability skills as well. So, what is your view? Because certainly there are people out there who are thinking one or the other, right? So this is a really that's why we say it's a very touchy subject because it's very subjective, right? Even though it needs to be more objective than subjective, but it's extremely subjective, right? And so please, guys, people who are watching the show, please remember we always talk about things as how they are and how they should be,
My
right?
headset has just
So
died. I do
if we
apologise.
if we say um, uh, we have an opinion, right? Uh, it's not certain, obviously. So some people say it is um, the teach obedience thing. Okay, so parenting is all about teaching kids to be obedient. But how about when something wrong is happening in a society? Okay, should they not question things? Yes, of course, right? And how about was it Rosa Parks, Paulette, who said, "No, I'm not giving up my seat on the bus." Right? Was it Rosa Parks? Can you hear me, Paulette? Oh, have we lost Paulette? Can you hear me, Paulette? Paulette, are you? Oh, you can't hear. Okay. Um. All right. Okay. So until Paulette can solve her technical issues, um, we're gonna go to number 2. How can I teach my child when to obey and when it's appropriate to question authority? So, as I said earlier on, there are situations where a child is kind of torn between making two decisions. One being questioning the authority, and 2 being obedient. So,
can you hear me now?
Yeah, Paulette, I can hear you loud and clear. Yes, of course. So, can you hear us? Can you hear me, Paulette? Okay. Right. So, what a parent, in our view, what a parent needs to do is giving their child different scenarios. So it is the scenarios that teaches your child. It's never a set. It's never a one size fits all kind of situation. It never is. Because if you raise kids who are just rebellious, they're going to be disturbing the peace at all times, and that's not something that society wants, right? They're going to be disrupting the pre-established rules and regulations, right? So, however, there are situations that when the need arises, a child needs to express their view and say that they are against something. So one of them is when, let's say in school, a teacher does something or says something wrong, right? Or is not being fair. Should all the kids be obedient? Because that's one of those scenarios, right? Or when a kid is sat at the final exams, and they are taking the test, and a kid wants to listen to the music out loud or wants to be on their phone and use and Google something, should they be allowed because they feel like to do so? Because there is this thing called accountability, right? So I would say you've got to keep the balance between being obedient and also questioning authority. Because questioning authority, and by the way, I'm not saying going full on Mad Max against the authority. I'm saying questioning the authority. When I say question the authority, I mean asking for explanation, asking for clarification. So when a teacher says you're not allowed to sit in the class, the kid should be allowed to say, so what is the reason? What have I done? Okay. How is it that I should change? They should be able to negotiate, right? And Paulette, can you hear us now? Okay. Can you hear me, Paulette? Okay, I think we've lost her. All right. Okay, so we're gonna go for a commercial break, and after that, we'll come back again and continue the show, guys.
Give me tea, give me lots of tea. My new favorite is a box of tea. Cups of tea, pots of tea, give me lots of tea. My new favorite is a box of tea. Give me tea, give me a box of tea. Can I please have a cup of a box of tea?
Tea, milk, 2 sugars. Tea, milk, 2 sugars. Tea, milk, 2 sugars. Tea, milk, 2 sugars. Fire!
Thank you so much for joining us once again. Can you hear us, Paulette?
Absolutely, yeah. Sorry about
Excellent.
that. Technical
That's fine.
issues.
Live programs, and they've got their own ups and downs and technical glitches. That was one of them.
Indeed.
Thank you for joining us again. So, people who've just joined us, we're talking about an important subject in parenting. You are watching Tea, Milk to Sugars, um, a, a program about helping parents be more effective parents. Today, we're talking about, are we raising honest children or careful liars? We already talked about number one, the purpose of parenting to teach obedience. Is the purpose of parenting to teach obedience or self-regulation? So a bit of both, perhaps. And number two, we talked about how can I teach my child when to obey and when it's appropriate to question authority. So we explained about that. We go to number three. How do children develop common sense and good judgment? Wow, this is one of those, Paul, isn't it? Common sense. Some people say, is that common? I'm not sure if you agree or disagree, but I'm sure you're going to share with us. Please go ahead.
So first of all, common sense doesn't just happen. You know, it's developed over time. The building blocks. Common sense is building blocks of life. So you learn by experience, you learn by guidance, you learn by reflection, and gradually that increases the responsibility. You don't just learn through lectures, you don't just learn through being told. It's what you see, what you hear, and what you do. And so, how do you develop a common sense and good judgment is basically by being around the right kind of people. So, choosing the right sorts of friends, choosing the right kind of people that you socialize with, that they've been given the right moral compass too, so that the friendship group doesn't take you down the wrong route, right? um, Mistakes take place when you suddenly find yourself in a different group entirely. You change classes and all your mates are in a different class, and suddenly you're with the naughty kids. And unfortunately, the naughty kids end up taking you to become one of the naughty kids. So instead of having the common sense and good judgment to make that decision, what happens is they end up just following the crowd, and they end up going down into the naughty crowd. So when you talk about is common sense and good judgment, or which is which, you know, without good judgment, common sense isn't worth anything, right? Common sense is what we hope that they've learned over time, but good judgment would be what would teach them to use their common sense. You know, it's like I've got all this common sense, but do I choose to use it? Hmm. Or do I go and do the thing that everyone else is doing? I think I might go, but what would they say about that? Or no, I feel like I should stay on this lane. And that's an explanation that I see of the two. Back to you.
Thank you so much. Also, I would like to thank our today's sponsor, Posarella, cosmetics and fashion items. So, Paulette, you've as a parent, you I was gonna say maybe, but definitely, I've seen situations where um, a child is not using common sense, and or they don't feel like being accountable that day. It's not a I'm gonna be accountable kind of Sunday. So how do we teach them that common sense is not an option? Common sense is a must. Because them kids usually end up in prison, or they find themselves in on a head-to-head collision with the law or authorities, and they hurt themselves, and more often than not, they hurt other people as well, right? So, what if they feel like um, driving their car when they are a little bit tipsy later on? You teach them now. That is wrong, right? So how do you enforce how do you explain to them that common sense is not a button you can press when you feel like it? How do you explain to them?
Well, it's a bit like saying to somebody that if you don't drink water, or you don't, you don't need water, and without water you'll die, right? End of story. So
Yeah,
it's a little bit like that. You really need to explain that without taking the necessary controls, and the control is, it's like driving without a steering wheel. Okay. If you imagine trying to drive a car without a steering wheel, that would be, very, very difficult, right? But what I'm
hmm
trying to say is that if you imagine, um, or even worse, let's say, as you said, driving whilst fighting with somebody. So you've only got like, one eye on the road and your hands going like this, or you're arguing, or you're trying to fight over a chocolate bar, and you literally got two hands over here and the steering wheel's doing its own thing. You're
yeah.
only going to end up in one place, and that's not where you want to be. So for me, the bigger question is, common sense is like the most important thing we can ever have in life. Learning to use it is what the job of a parent, the job of good parenting, or the job of good guardianship, the job of whoever is your influential, parent or guardian. Their job is to make sure that you understand that common sense is the driving force of your life. And it's the rule abider. It's the right from the wrong decisions. And I think it's imperative that we use the guidance that they've learned, the guidance they've been taught, the guidance that we've all collectively shown them at the right time.
So
Because
when do we
let's
start? When do we? Sorry for interrupting you, Paulette, but when do
That's
we
right.
start that? Because number four is so well connected to the previous one.
Mm.
Um, at what age should children become responsible for their own actions?
I'm gonna use an example of, I remember being terrified that my 3-year-old child still wet the bed and was still needing to wear, these pants at night, the wet the bed pants, and thinking it was terrible. And then a child came to stay for a sleepover, and they had these like much, much older grown up type pant size, 7-year-old pants. And I was like, "You wear those at night?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah. I just in case of an accident. Mum says it's best." And I sort of thought, it's very strange. So obviously not in front of him. I just said, "Oh, okay, fine, no problem." So Ben said, "I don't wear them." I said, "No, no, but that's okay though. You go to bed, it's fine." So he put his jammies on and he got himself sorted, and they prepared and went to bed, and they were both fine. And then when the mum picked them up, they were playing in the garden. So I just had a few minutes with the mum, and I said, "I noticed it. He was still wearing those pull-ups. What was that then?" She said, "Well, I just thought, as it's his first ever sleepover, and he has had quite a few accidents recently, I thought it was better for him." And I said, "Do you know why he's having accidents?" She said, "Well, I think it's because he still is so thirsty, he drinks during the night. And I said, so you give him a drink at night? She said, well, he has a drink before he goes to bed. He has milk. And then he has water by his bed and he drinks that during the night. And then he too tired to get up and go to the toilet. So he just wets himself. So I said, well, the way that I got around that was the last drink was this time. I know that if he was coughing and spluttering and whatever, I'd hear him and I'd get up and go and give him a drink. There was no drink by the side of the bed. And that stopped him, having accidents. She said, but surely he should have the freedom to drink if he wants to drink. You leave a bowl of water on the floor for the dog, wouldn't you? And I looked and I went, yeah, my dog doesn't wet the bed either, the answer is every child is different. And that's absolutely 100%. We know that. But the key here is to say that I felt at 7 years old, it wasn't fair on him that he was still wearing those pants because he was embarrassed. And so when I talk about, her telling me off for saying he shouldn't have a drink, but the dog has a bowl of water, is her way of fighting back. How dare I question her parenting? And I wasn't questioning her parenting. I was saying I felt sorry for her son because the son had to explain to my son as to why he was still wearing big boy pants in bed, and I think this is key. If you mollycoddle your child and if you give them that, you over care. That's an odd way to say it, but if you over love, over care, over everything, all you're doing is creating a child with more complex needs in the end, because they're going to turn around and go, I hated the way I was brought up. I hated the way that I did this. And they revolt and they go the complete opposite direction because they'll be, I don't want this and I don't want that. I don't want those controls. So they'll get to university or wherever and they'll be the ones that will attempt to everything that you would think they wouldn't attempt, they'll be trying. And the reason they'll be trying it is because they felt so rigid in their boundaries that they're going to go and do all the things that you don't want them to do. And I've seen that happen more than once. And parents go, but I don't understand, and it's like, well, you try to keep them in this very rigid boundary and they revolted. And the way they revolted was to go off and do their own thing, however they wanted, and in such a way that creates a very, very difficult situation for everybody. So I think that teaching children, I mean, pleases and thank yous are so important to me, right? If somebody doesn't say please and thank you, I'm like, my ears prick up, whether it's my child, my husband, my family, anybody. But pleases and thank yous are they go without saying as being expected. But when somebody says, do you have any cashew nuts? And you look at them and say, sorry. No, I've got some crisps if you'd like some crisps. That's the only snack I have on offer. I don't have cashew nuts on offer, That is very strange to me. I didn't get asked please or thank you. It was just, have you got any? And it was such a direct question. And I was like, wow, where did that come from, So I think I brought my child up. He would never have done that. He would have said, excuse me, firstly, would it be possible? Would you mind? It would be that kind of a conversation. It wouldn't be the sort of conversation where someone just comes straight out and says, I want, or I need, or can I have? And I think that's the difference. It's about those early interactions of those pleases and those thank yous start from the age of 2 and 3. At 2 and 3, children know please and thank you. They know yes, they know no, they know right, they know wrong. They know when you say, if you put your hand in that fan, you're going to get hurt. If you put your hand on the oven, you're going to get burnt. And if you say, they say, well, I don't believe you. So you say, well, we'll try. And they'll do it for like a second. They go, oh, I go, see, told you, you know? I have never lied to my child. I've made it very clear that if they do certain things, there will be consequences, i.e., the fire is hot, the oven's hot, the blaze on the fan go round and they will hurt you. And if you try and jump off the wall and it's 6 foot tall, you're going to break a bone. And I really don't want to sit in A&E for hours. So I've tried really, as much as I make jokes about these things, the jokes have all got kind of a little message behind them, you know? If you don't believe the fire is hot, touch it, but only for a second. Yeah? I don't want them to have to fix a burnt finger. I just want them to feel the heat. I mean, sometimes they don't even get close enough to the oven door. You go, oh, actually, you're probably right. That is a bit hot. So then when they've learned that you don't tell lies, everything that comes out of your mouth, apart from the things like, and I hope no children are listening, Santa Claus and, you know, the Easter Bunny and things like that, they're the lies that we do because we think it's great that they have that to
What?
look forward
Santa's
to.
real?
Sorry, Cyrus, I do apologize. But, you know,
Okay.
I remember my son I got a really abusive phone call from somebody who said, your son made my son cry. And I said, why did my son make your son cry? Because he told them that Santa Claus wasn't real. And I said, they're 11. They're going up to senior school. And she said, listen, he didn't speak to me for a week after he found out about the Easter Bunny. And I was like, listen, what did my son say? And she said, well, all I know is it made him cry. I said, let me talk to him. So I spoke to my son. He said, no, mum. When I came back from I carried all the football, you know, the big triangle sort of things back. When I carried them all back, all the I can't think what the word is, but you know what I mean, the posts. When he brought them all back, he said he was late back, and when he got to the changing room, he was crying. And he said, why are you crying? He said, because they all told me that Santa Claus isn't real. And Ben said, come on, we just had sex ed. You can't have sex education and Santa Claus. You know, that's matter of fact, yes. Was it brutal? Yes. But that's my son. It's very black and white. You can't have sex ed and
Very
Santa
matter
Claus
of
in the
fact.
same. Very
Yeah.
matter of fact. And it was said in such a way as to try and make him understand that it's not unreasonable to not to accept that Santa isn't real anymore. So I said, he didn't start it off. It all happened already and he just got there. So she
Yeah.
said, oh, okay, fine, I'll talk to him. And she came back and she said, actually, you are 100% right in what you said. And now he's a lot happier that he's understood that sex education is for big boys and that he has to let Santa Claus go. And I was like, oh, I'm very pleased to hear that. And the phone, and that was the end of the conversation. But you do have to understand that, you know, everybody does it differently. You know, if you want to hang on to your child as long as possible and keep them as young as possible for long as possible, and every other child is growing up normally at the rate that you'd expect, you're going to have conflict, you're going to have surprises, you're going to have shocks, because everything isn't going to go the way you hoped. End of story. Back to you, Cyrus.
Thank you so much. So the next one, very quickly, because we're running out of time, very quickly, I'm going to just refer to, well, just answer it in a really succinct and brief way.
Mm-hmm.
So number 5. When should consequences replace punishment? So this begs the question: should we have punishment at all? Right? Yes. There are times when obviously it's never corporal punishment. It's never physical. Never physical. If you are a parent who resorts to physical punishment, that means you have have had a lot of missed opportunities. There's things that you were supposed to do and you haven't done, on the other way around. They were supposed to, you weren't supposed to do and you have done. And it's just something that is not recommended at all, because it always backfires, and it has a really short and limited shelf life. Okay, so you can't punish your child physically forever, and it's something that you should never ever do, because the psychological scars remain with your child, and then your child ends up in a prison, or expresses himself in ways they shouldn't be, does drugs, does things that they shouldn't be doing, right? And parents, please raise your children as correctly as you can. Please, I'm begging you. Why? Because one of your kids might end up telling people to inject themselves with bleach to cure COVID, right? So when you don't raise your kid right, that's the outcome. Okay, raise your kid right, please, to the best of your ability. Okay, don't be too strict, but don't put things on autopilot forever either, right? So just share with them, and they will share with you, right? Just make sure there are consequences rather than punishment, because when there are consequences, they are measurable. You can measure them. You can put 3 strikes in place, and one shouldn't escalate to punishment from 0 to 100 because of one wrong thing they have done, right? People, kids especially, make mistakes. That's how they learn, right? So they are evaluating the boundaries. They want to find out how far they can push things. They're careless. They're children. Hello. So they are children. They make mistakes, right? What does it mean, mistakes? When you get something wrong, right? You get it wrong. You get it wrong as a parent, and of course as a child you used to get it wrong, right? We just remember how you started talking. Just remember how your kids started talking. They say things wrong, and then after that, through repetition, they get it right. They get it right after a while, right? So please be more tolerant. Focus on consequences, and because later they will be dealing with both consequences and punishment, right? Look at all of those kids who are not kids anymore, who are adults, and they are in prison now for life. How do you think that kids, that guy's or that girl's parents feel? Hurt, obviously, right? So don't be that parent, please. Next one, which needs
Cyrus, just very
expansion in
quickly,
2 seconds. Go on, sorry.
I'm just going to say that a very easy way to remember this is that consequences teach responsibility. Punishment focuses on stopping behaviour. Consequences teach responsibility. Punishment focuses on stopping behaviour. Back to you.
Thank you. That is very deep insight, and I loved it. Can kids learn by punishment? What are you teaching them, though? Yes, we learn from everything, but what do you teach your child? You're teaching your child, you can't trust me. Don't trust me. Don't share with me. And if you do, and if I find out about the things you're doing, whatever I disagree with, I'm going to punish you. I'm going to physically or mentally hurt you. That's what punishment is, isn't it? Physically or mentally scarring a child is definitely not recommended, right? So unless you want to scar your children, which I'm sure you don't, you shouldn't use punishment. So
and it's only ever temporary, just so you know. Punishment, and it does lead on to number 6, but punishment is only ever a temporary fix. So a punishment lasts as long as the punishment lasts, and then as soon as the punishment is over, they've forgotten about it and they're ready to go again. So the thing about punishment is that you've not taught them anything except that you've stopped them by punishing them. Or that's all they've learned, is they've been punished. Whereas if you actually teach them about self-control and good behavior, and then that leads to positive consequences. So in other words, you encourage them to have 5 good days at school without getting into trouble. Special treat, we go to Mackie D's or somewhere. But, you know, there's a big difference between punishment, which is short-term fix and doesn't actually change a thing. All it does is teach them that you have some control over them. And that is a very temporary fix.
I call that punishing parents. I personally call them Bluetooth parents. Why Bluetooth parents? Because their kids listen to them as long as they are like 10 feet away from them and they're there in their line of sight. And as soon as they can't see them, that connection is lost, and you're
Good
not
analogy.
connected to them anymore, right? I always call them Bluetooth parents, and it's not good to be a Bluetooth parent. So the next point, which nobody better than you can explain this, does punishment actually improve behavior, or does it simply create fear? So in 2 minutes or so, please share with us, Paulette, because we need to go through the other 4 as well.
Yeah, as I said, punishment can only stop behavior temporarily. That's it. End of story. Punishment is just literally a temporary fix to a situation. It doesn't teach good behavior or self-control. And so for me, punishment does not improve behavior. All it does is, like if you said to a child, all the time you're at Nan's, you're not to open your mouth. I don't even want to hear a noise out of your way. Just sit in the car, sit in the chair and not say a word, right? It's because you're frightened the child might say something to the grandparent that the grandparent won't want to hear. All that does is make the child feel really hateful towards the grandparent, doesn't want to be in that house, doesn't want to be anywhere near them, doesn't want to sit in that chair. And by the time they get outside, they are an absolute boiling pot because they've been keeping it all inside. And when they come outside, they just absolutely lose it completely. And you wonder why. Why am I suddenly getting all this abuse on the way home? Well, because they've been sat there like a coiled spring for the last hour, not saying a word, and the grandparent saying what a little angel they are because they've been a little coiled spring, scared to do anything. So punishment never it never is the solution. It's only a short-term fix. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Paulette. So you just want to scare your child, or do you want to change their behavior? That's the question you need to ask yourself. If you want to change their behavior, put in place consequences. Explain about actions and consequences, and you will increase the number of hours and days and years that they stay out of prison. I promise you. So next, why do some children lie to their parents? Don't even get me started on that one. Paulette, please go ahead and you share your view on that one. That is something that is it the learned behavior? Is it learned behavior, or is it something that we teach our kids? That is a lot of parents disagree. If it's the environment, if it's their own actions, who would you find responsible for this? Because a child who's been on the planet for 7 years, 8 years, right? And you as a parent, you've been on the planet for, I don't know, 30 years, let's say, right? Which one of you knows more? Which one of you has taught the other, right? So can you say, oh, I learned that from my child? Well, you can, but you shouldn't. So what is your view on number 7, Paulette? Why do children lie to their parents?
Okay, number one, all children lie to their parents. First comment, okay? All children,
And
even
all
the
parents
lying
lie to their
ones.
children.
No,
Yeah,
all
all.
children lie to their parents. All children lie.
Yeah. How about parents? Do they lie to the children?
Right. Parents lie to their children too, even if I said
Yes.
Santa Claus as a lie.
Mm. Yes. Yes.
The consequences of the lies, you know, if you say to a child, if you do X, you will have no iPad for a month. And then the next morning, the iPad's at the table at breakfast because actually that's the quietest time for you to just have a think while you're looking at your phone, eating your breakfast. That's rubbish because you lied about the punishment. So you lied about the consequences of the action. So you lied, they lie. You know, it is a mirrored behavior. It is a monkey see, monkey do behavior. But also, children lie for different reasons. So, fear of punishment will make them lie. So, did you do your homework? Because I've got a letter that says you didn't. No, I did. The dog ate it. You know, that kind of thing that we can laugh at, but we know it's still a lie. They're fearful of disappointment. They're fearful of embarrassment. They're fearful of losing trust and privileges. So they will lie because it actually makes sense to lie. Okay, understand what I'm saying. It makes sense to lie in that moment to get them out of a situation. Now, as human adults, are we going to sit here and say we've never done that? Oh, did we do that when we were kids? Of course we did. It's every child will lie to their parents, every parent will lie to their children. The answer is really try to limit the lies you tell and make it as I always used to say to my child anyway, and I've said to other children in the you know that have been in my earshot, um, it's far better to tell the truth right at the very beginning of a problem, and we deal with it then than deal with it later when other things have happened and it's got worse. So, in other words, you know, the first pain is the best pain. Um, I don't mean pain physically, I'm talking about as in the words, right? I'm disappointed in you might be what you get to hear, but if it turns out to be lie upon lie upon lie, because that's how lies happen. They have this habit of you need to tell a bigger one to get over the next one to get over the next one. And if you haven't got a good memory, you're going to get caught out every time. That's both children and adults. But with children, they will lie to get themselves out of the immediate problem. And then you say to them, listen, I have reason to believe you're telling me a lie. Now, it's up to you. You've got one chance. Tell me the truth and we deal with it. Or we carry on down the route of you thinking that you don't think I know something, but let me tell you I do. So now you sit there and think about it. And when you've made your mind up, you come and find me. That's a far better way of handling a lie is by saying to the child, go and think about the lie and the consequences, and then come back. And then you are in a position where you can actually say, I would far rather you told me the truth than try to kind of cover it up. That stain on the floor didn't magically appear when you got home from school. You know, it's Ribena. I don't drink Ribena. No one else has been in the house and it wasn't there this morning. So, you know, it's pretty obvious how the Ribena stain got on the floor. Why are you telling me it wasn't you? You know, that's the sort of situation. Children will lie to get themselves out of fear. Fear is the word I'm using here. And it's fear of punishment, disappointment, embarrassment, or losing trust or privileges. That's the only reason children tell lies. Back to you.
You can categorize them all under the title fear, can't you?
It's all fear.
They're fearful, yeah, fearful of losing face. They are fearful of losing the trust, of parents' trust. They
Mm.
are fearful of how the parent would
Privileges.
react.
Mm.
Privileges, losing privileges, how the parent would
Mm.
react. So I think, in a way, the parent would set the tone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Okay. Number 8. Can being too strict damage my relationship with my child? Obviously. How can you imagine a relationship with anybody, especially someone as fragile as a child? How can you imagine a relationship with anybody if there are harsh consequences behind every action? How can you do that? How can you expect a good relationship? You can't. And that relationship is more fragile if you punish, right? Punish because they lie, punish because they've done something wrong, even if when they tell the truth, right? So th- they'll be damned if they do, they'll be damned if they don't, right? So, and the kid thinks, okay, I'll tell the truth, I'm gonna lose my iPad. I tell a lie, I'm gonna keep my iPad. So they want to manipulate the outcome. They want to get the outcome they want. It's not always because the parent is a punisher. Sometimes the kid learns by telling a white lie, they get to change the outcome. That gives them a little bit of because they are calculating, right? Kids are remember, they are still really intelligent, right? Squirrels calculate the consequences. Of course, a human being's child would do the same thing, right? So your child wants to get the outcomes they want. And one of those outcomes is keeping you on side, not getting on the wrong side of you because you're an adult, right? And no matter how you look at it, you're bigger, you're older, and you are in control of everything. The resources, food, kindness, everything really. You are the parent. You're the boss. Imagine how would you behave in the office? To save yourself from punishment, would you not tell your boss a lie if you can get away with it? Of course you would. Why would you lie to your boss? Because you know you would get punished. So always remember they tell a lie because they are fearful of the harsh consequences. So number 8. Can being too strict damage my relationship with my child? Please go ahead, Paula.
Yes.
Mm,
It's very simple. Yes.
mm,
Any kind of excessive control can weaken trust. It will weaken openness. It will weaken emotional closeness over time. So, in other words, if you want a good relationship with your child, you need to manage your own relationship with them by guidance, boundaries. Ben, I've been sung out. Can you come up?
right, I think Paulette's dealing with some technical issues. I'm gonna go to number 9. How do I correct bad behavior without my child feeling ashamed. Well, bad behavior is something you need to. Okay, let me put it this way. If you do not, before the action takes place, before they demonstrate bad behavior, if you don't tell them such and such behavior is wrong, you can't expect them to know, right? So I'm talking about children of young age. So you have to let them demonstrate something you call bad behavior at least once before you can punish them, because it's not possible to actually explain about all of the bad behavior. There's no such thing as a manual for bad behavior, right? And at the end of the day, a parent doesn't shape a child. A parent is really designing and shaping and reshaping that voice inside their head for the rest of their lives, because whatever you tell them as right or wrong, it gets stored in something called the belief system. So whether you believe it or not, you are one of the major sources of shaping that belief system, right? Your greatest inheritance isn't really money, property, and stuff like that, or gold or silver. The main inheritance is the ability to make wise decisions when no one is watching them, because when no one's watching them is what I call the baseline behavior, right? When nobody's watching them, when nobody's watching us, how do we behave, right? How do we behave when nobody's watching us? That is when there's no cameras, when there's no CCTV, when there is nobody else to see what's happening. That is the baseline. What is your child's baseline? What kind of baseline are you creating for your child, right? That is a significant question to answer. Not me, not to me, not anybody else, and anybody else. That's a question you need to ask yourself and answer for yourself. So right, number 9. How do I correct bad behavior without making my child feel ashamed? Paulette, please go ahead. You are on mute, Paulette.
Just as well, because you missed what I said about the internet. The way you correct bad behavior without making a child feel ashamed is protect the child's dignity. So if you remember, going back to the story of the child that's still wearing the pants, right? That child had no dignity. That child felt embarrassed. That child felt humiliated. That did not correct the child wetting the bed. It facilitated the child wetting the bed. What it did was it said, "It's okay, darling, if you wet the bed because you've got your special pants on." That's not the way around it. The way around it was to stop all drinks after 6 o'clock at night, and he'll survive quite well and he'll be fine for the next day, right? Correcting bad behavior without making a child feel embarrassed, ashamed, loss of dignity. I always feel that when you remind somebody they can improve, they can do better. I once had 2 children. One was super bright, one was average. The super bright child's grades were put up, and then underneath it were the other child's grades. And the child that was number 2 child was never going to make the grades of child number A, or, the first child. And the first child was a straight A student. The second child was more like a B or a C student. And he always felt like a failure. And he would love to come and talk to me and say, "I'm never going to be as good as my brother." Well, actually, he turned out to be the head of the, CCF, the head of the army. He ended up getting all kinds of accolades and awards. He's gone to university to become something that nobody had thought of in sports. And you know what? He's happy. And he's had a girlfriend since he was like 16, 17. And he's a really smashing lad. And yet he was made to feel so inferior. So I think that the question here is about looking after that child's dignity and reminding them that, yes, you know what? You might be able to get Bs. If you work a bit harder, you could get Bs. Forget As. Let's just talk about Bs, right? Promote progress. Absolutely. I'm all for promoting improvement, but let's not be so harsh that you make that child feel inferior and therefore ashamed. And that is horrible. And that is scarring. You are scarring your child by doing that. Back to you, Cyrus.
Thank you. And Paulette, about how not to make them feel ashamed. People feel ashamed when they feel there is no hope of redemption, right? So, and people who live as an ashamed kind of person, people whose default settings is always feeling ashamed, they are the most dangerous people on the planet. Let me explain to you why. The reason behind it is, so they are the ones who scratch your car but never exchange details. They scratch your car and then drive away because that person knows, well, I'm already a bad person anyway. I am ashamed of it. Okay? Shame and regret are complete opposite things, right? So regret is when somebody scratches your car and then he says, oh, I'm very sorry about it. Let me do something about it. When they do something about it, that's regret because they try to redeem themselves and compensate for something that has gone wrong, as innocent as it might be, right? It's bad stuff happens, right? It happens. So they happen. So if I scratch your car and I tell myself, well, I'm a bad person anyway, who cares? I've been a bad person for 25, 30 years now. I'm used to it, right? And they're going to drive away, right? They never compensate for the bad things they do. They are ashamed. So that's the difference between shame and regret. Redemption, right? So they feel they are beyond redemption. What is your take on that?
I love that analogy, but I'd also say this, that when you're in a safe environment and when children feel safe is when they're going to learn the most, okay? So if you, even when you're telling your child off, you say to your child, you know, I love you, right? Nothing's going to change that, okay? However, X, Y, and Z, okay? Or something like, you know you did wrong, but what we're going to do is blah, 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 blah to make it right. So if you even if it means you have to write a card of an apology to that person and then give them back what you took from them. Why did you bring it home in your pocket? It's not yours. Well, I liked it. Well, I'm sorry. That's called stealing. And that has to go back to that child. Oh, how do I give it back to them? Should we sneak it in? No. You're going to write a little note saying you're very sorry. You happened to notice it was in your pocket when you got home. I don't really want to do that. No, I don't suppose you do. But you're going to do it because I love you and you love me. And this is the rules of the house. We're always honest. Okay, I'll write the note. And it's just about them feeling safe, knowing they're still going to be loved. It's kind of about teaching emotional intelligence. It's about regulation, emotional regulation, and overwhelm. You know, if you are screaming and shouting and hollering, that is going to put that child into massive overwhelm. Nothing they say or do is right. As you said, they're doomed if they do and they're damned if they don't. It doesn't matter which way they go. So I think it's really important that that shame word that you just use is really relevant.
So don't make them feel ashamed, right? Don't make them feel ashamed. You know, when I was a naughty kid when I was a kid, right? I would not want to be a parent to me. I would not want a child like that. That's the honest truth. Um, yeah, that happened. So, but my mom always, she calls it a love sandwich. I always ask her, so the first time she told me that's the method, I was like, what's a love sandwich? And she said, do you remember when you did something wrong? I would always ask you, if I recorded you, would you have showed it to your grandparents? Would you have showed it to the world? Would you have showed that video to the world? She always asked me. And if I said something wrong, she said, if you wrote it, would you frame it and put it on the wall for the guests who come to our house for visits to see it? Would you do that? Would you put that in a frame, Cyrus? Wow. That's so she would start by saying, I love you, right? You've been a complete idiot, right? And at the end she would say, you do realize that I still love you. And that is never that never is, it's never a question, right? Whether I love you or not. The answer is always yes. If it was a question, the answer is always yes. So I love you. You've been a complete idiot. I love you. Right? I love you. How are you gonna make it right? I love you. Okay, so so I always felt safe, even though when I was out and about or in school, that's not the way the kids talked to me. That's not the way the parents, other parents talked to me. That's not the way the teachers talked to me. That's not how the like dean of the college talked to me. No, that's only the way my mom talked to me, and her methods is what built me, right? Because outside a safe space, the environment is always hostile. Either it's hostile or is perceived by that child as hostile, right? It might not be hostile. It might be very normal, but a guilty conscience needs no accuser, right? So you know what you've done as a child. You know what you've done. So you go to the parent, and sometimes all a parent needs to do is just look at that child. That's all you need to do. And sometimes my mom would tell me, so what did you say? As if the conversation had happened, like for 15, 20 minutes. She would start the conversation from the middle. And she said, and what did you say? And what did you do? And I was, later on when I grew up, I was like, how would you know? She said, when you came home, I always hugged you. That's a mom's hug. I smelled you to see if you've been around people who smoked, or if you've touched the smoke yourself. I would check your bag when you came home to see what is there, what is not there, because I would put your stuff in your bag before you went to school. Right. I was like, Mom, did you work for CIA or something? And she said, no, that's called being a mom. Well, I can never experience that. I could never be a mom. Not that I regret it. But I know she's a very wise woman. And she never made me feel ashamed. She's a very formidable character. To this day, I'm scared of her, even though she was never violent towards me. I always knew I was supposed to live and do things within a boundary. Okay, so she's really, really good at boundary setting. Okay, so she's the best boundary setter I know on this bloody planet. So, so the point is, when you set the boundaries, you can start the conversation from the middle. She would see there's mud on my clothes, so she knew a fight had happened, some sort of altercation had happened. So, so did you hit them back as well? Because she would see some bruising. So she would gather information. So when she came to school, it was as if she had the full picture the next day, right? because she knew for a fact that she had to go to school. Now, the next point. So, guys, so we talked about the matter about number 9 up until the moment that we recommended not to make them feel ashamed, because shame is not a helpful sentiment at all. Okay, it's not a helpful feeling. It's just the most destructive. Number 10. Oh, we're back to the main one again, aren't we? Are we raising honest children or careful liars? Which one of these two are we making? Because our kids aren't built by the things we tell them. They're built by the things we show them. What is your take on that, Paula?
It depends largely on whether honesty is consistently safer than hiding mistakes. So, what do I mean by that? If I know that by being honest, I'm going to get into a fight, an argument, I've got aggression in the house or shouting, it's probably easier for me to lie than it is for me to be truthful. So in that situation, I understand fully why the child would choose to fabricate a story rather than to hit the truth, because the result of the truth would be too difficult to handle. But if I was a child walking into a calm, fair, honest home with parents that are listening, like you and I are talking now, then I would expect the child to be able to be honest. So, this is the thing I will say. Whether you are lower class, middle class, upper class, okay, it doesn't matter what class you are, your children are going to tell you some lies because that's life. They're also going to know more about certain things than you'll ever know. Technology is always going to be one of them because they are learning as they go. So everything that's new to us, they've already learned as new. So, they can work their way around phones before we could. At 2 and 3 years old now, they can change to YouTube, to watch videos, to do things like that. Am I saying that's a good thing? No, I'm not. But am I saying they're capable of it? Yes, I am. I remember when my son picked up the DVD player remote control and turned it on, and I was like, oh, how did you know how to do that? He'd watched us so many times and he just copied it. He was only 1 year old. It was pretty freaky, but he'd watched that you press that button, it starts. He didn't have the television on because he didn't know he needed 2 controls, because the television would already have been on, so he didn't realize he had to turn the telly on. But he was fiddling with the old DVD player, pressing the button to watch his video that he liked. So, nothing has changed in 20 odd years. So what I'm trying to say is this: with the way that technology has grown, the way that technology is advancing, the way that information is growing and changing and advancing, I know if you say to somebody, did you look up that answer on AI? Because it reads a bit too detailed. It reads a little bit like you got that answer from AI as opposed to your normal standard of answer. And the kid goes, no, didn't do that. Not at all. Didn't use AI, no. What's AI, sir? The teacher's going, oh, yeah, because I was born yesterday, right? The teacher's seen a massive change from the answers they normally give to the answer they've just got. They are going to pick up on that in a heartbeat. If you're talking about generally, are children going to lie to us? Are they going to say they've got 5 accounts and they've only got 1 account? No, they're going to tell us they've got 1 account when they've got 5. Are they going to tell us they've not got all these things downloaded when you know damn well they have? Are they going to say they've never tried a cigarette when they maybe have? Possibly. But please God, it stops there. They're never going to try drugs. They're never going to try some things that are really going to damage them. Because if you've set the boundary that this is right and this is wrong, Cyrus mentioned it right at the very beginning about driving, having had a drink. You know, my son drives, he would never even consider having an alcoholic drink and driving. Absolutely never in a million years. Go back to my parents' generation, they always used to go out for a drink and drive home. The farmers round here still do it. It's terrifying. You never go out after 10:30 because they're all on the way home from the pub and they're all like half cut. And because it's all, you know, country lanes, nobody bothers. The only person they're probably going to hurt is themselves. But am I encouraging that? No, of course I'm not. But I'm not condoning it, but it's a fact. That's their generation. That's what they learn. Our generation have learned the consequences of drinking and driving, that it could kill someone. And so they don't do it in the main. The end result really is that we have to understand that, and this is sort of going back to what you said as well, Cyrus. If you respond with curiosity, if you respond before judgment, if you respond with honesty from consequences wherever possible, then you will actually be getting a far better reaction from both you and your child. Whenever you are in a situation where you're both fighting and both resenting each other, it's never going to win. They're going to just keep lying and lying and lying. And so what we need to do is try and bring it back to, okay, I don't think that happened, did it? It's not quite how it happened, is it? How about I give you another chance? And I love that second chance. I'll give you another go at that. Okay. Because you had the phone call from the school telling you what happened. So you know what happened. And you're now asking the child for their version of the same thing, and it'll be completely different. So how about we give you another go at that? And then they think, well, why does mum need a second chance? Oh no, what does she know? Who's told her? Who's spoken to her? Do you understand what I'm saying? There's a little moment in their mind that says,
Yeah,
what do they
absolutely.
know that I don't know?
Absolutely. Thank you, Paulette.
Milk to sugar.
Thank you so much for watching and listening to Tea, Milk, Two Sugars. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Please share your opinions with us. Tell us what you think about the show so far. Tell us where we got it wrong. Tell us what you agree with. And because at the end of the day, we are also parents, and nothing that we say is set in stone, but there are things that can be helpful to a parent if they follow those things. And I would like to thank our main sponsor today, Aboxity.
Give me tea, give me tea, give me lots of tea. My new favorite is a box of tea. Cups of tea, pots of tea, give me lots of tea. My new favorite is a box of tea. Give me tea, give me tea, give me a box of tea. Can I please have a cup of a box of tea?
Any closing comments, Paulette?
Yeah, I have actually. The strongest evidence suggests that the ultimate purpose of parenting is not to produce children who simply obey, but adults who govern wisely. Obedience is an important place and has a place to be, absolutely, especially for safety during early childhood, like crossing the road and things like that. but it should gradually evolve into self-regulation, sound judgment, a loving home with honesty, accountability, and moral reasoning.
Thank you so much, Paulette. Guys, we are lucky to have Paulette Hallam on our team. Because of the work that she's done for charity, and she's still doing for charity. The charity that she's running is called Jack and Walter, and Jack and Walter can be explained by Paulette Hallam the best. Paulette, can you please explain about Jack and Walter and the scope of its operations?
Gosh, yeah, I'd love to. So Jack and Water is all about Jack being the subconscious mind, the all confused, never sure what to do, gets himself in a flap over everything. And Water is the conscious mind, the thinking side of the mind that says, hang on a moment, we know better than that, don't we? That moral compass. Should we go off with Michael and play over on the park where mum says we shouldn't go because that's where the bad boys go? Or should we not? And Jack might be a little bit hesitant. Maybe I will. Water says, let's not do that. Now, Jack and Water are the same person. It's the same characters. We're just messing with children so that they can get to understand who water is and what water does. And gradually, at the end of the book, they understand that water is them. They will always understand eventually that water is them. They think as this is me. I made that decision. I worked that out by myself. Aren't I clever? Right? And that is the absolute basis of the books. It's giving children the facility for them to understand that they're capable of so much more. And we don't give them credit for it. The books do. The books say to the children, yeah, you're going to get yourself in a pickle over the new bedroom. You're going to get yourself in a pickle about going to new school. You're going to get in a pickle about losing a grandparent. But you know what? When water's there and you ask, what would water do? It helps you breathe slowly. What would water do is box breathing. And then when you've done that, that helps you just to go into flip your head straight into your conscious mind. What would I do? What should I do? How do I get out of this situation? And then the answers come. And that's basically what the whole premise of Jack and Water is about. There aren't books like this. There's never been a book written like this. I'm told reliably by many psychologists, many teachers, and libraries, and people tell me that these books are so different because they are self-help books, but the children are actually helping themselves. And it teaches emotional intelligence. And what the benefit of this for me is that parents are now learning from the books. So when the parents read the books to the children, they learn. When the children read the books, they learn. And when they read them together, they both learn.
And then they have a
That is,
reference. They have a reference, and they can both have that reference and that
yes,
mutual understanding. And that Jack and
yeah,
Walter are the and that mutual concept that connects the child with the mother or the father um, intellectually as well, right?
mm.
So could you please explain which sort of problems each book solves?
Yeah, but transitions are the hardest thing for any child to handle. So going to school, going to nursery, parents leaving them at nursery or at school is terrifying because they've never been separated before and they think you might never come back. You might leave them there and never come back. So, in the same way that a puppy will cry because you've left it in the house on its own, it's the same principle with a child being left at
Yeah,
school. And then when they start to go to school, they get used to a classroom, they get used to a teacher, and then they get told every year, "You're changing classroom and you're changing teacher," and they're like, "No, no, 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 I quite liked it in that one. And then all of a sudden they've got to deal with that transition again. And that happens every year until they're 16, 17. And guess what happens then? They go to work or college or university, and then it's all over again. It starts all over again. With the new school story, we talk specifically about will I make friends? That is really important for adults, for children. It's the same thing. You start a new job. Will I actually like anybody there? Will anyone like me? You have to understand that the problems that our kids, they grow with us. And if we have a bad experience, if we didn't make any friends at school, guess what? You're going to think you're not going to make any friends at work either. So, it's the same thing when you talk about public speaking. You have a bad experience of speaking in class, can't read, you stutter, you get your words wrong. When you're told to public speak as part of your job, you are going to absolutely throw your, toys out the pram, and you're not going to want to do it. The Bantaless Breakfast Mystery is really a story about bereavement. It's a story about losing somebody. We did it very gently with a retrospective look back, and Jack suddenly realizes why his granddad is called Grandad Star, because he's always been called Grandad Star. He's the star at the biggest, brightest star in the sky is Grandad Star, but he's only ever known him as Grandad Star. And now suddenly, on the day of his anniversary of his death, the grandmother explains why she's so sad. And it throws a complete spanner in the works at breakfast, and nobody knows what's going on. And it's only when we actually unwind the story that Jack suddenly realizes what he's missed out on. All the golf that he could have been taught, or how to fish, and all the fun things they would have done together, all the things they would have made in the woodwork shop. And now he's as miserable as the grandmother. So it goes through the complete, transition, and then the pair of them sit together and work it all out. And in New House Nerves, it's about a new house, but it could be about a new room, it could be about a new home. If you think about a foster child, they're changing houses constantly. They are changing into from one home to another, from one house to another.
First
New
day in a new country, first day in a
new
hospital.
country, absolutely, or even in going into hospital the first time. Any transition that is new house nerves is almost it covers all bases for all of it, whether it's a new country, a new home, a new hospital, going to a dentist, anything that's new, it's a transition and it's terrifying. And the books just help placate the fear and it makes it all okay. And that's what books are supposed to do, is leave the child feeling more confident at the end of it.
Thank you so much, Paulette.
Thank you.
As always, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for every contributions you've made so far within the past episodes and today's. And guys, it's not easy to be a parent. I know that. Um, it's very difficult at times. It's very rewarding, but it's very difficult as well. When you get it wrong, everyone's talking about, oh, you as a parent got it wrong, but nobody talks about the difficulties you as a parent go through. Nobody goes through the occasional abuse you get from your children every once in a while, right? It's a thankless job. I know that. But please remember, behind every behavior, there's a need. Imagine a beautiful flower pot or beautiful vase on a table. That vase and those flowers in it is like the behavior. Where is it standing on? On a table. That table is what keeps the vase in place, right? That is the need underneath, sometimes hiding, right? sometimes hiding. You know, look at um, um, an iceberg. You can see only 20% of it above the surface of about the surface of water. 80% of it is under there. Do you really think when Titanic sank, it was hit by what was on the surface of the water? No. It tore through the side of the boat, side of the ship. And as they say, not all the waters in the world can sink your ship until you allow the water into the ship. That's when the ship goes down. And when the ship sinks, that's a little bit too late to notice things, right? You can only reflect on things afterwards, right? So do your homework now, right? Get it right now, because when the ship is sinking, it's a little bit too late. All you can do is just abandon the ship. When your child is being sent to prison, as an adult or as a kid, it makes no difference. Your child is always remains your child, right? So you wish you had got it right before, okay? Life is like a movie. Life is like a video player that comes with no rewind button. You live it once. Try to get it right. Try and try and try. And if you failed, try again. Parenting is about failing and trying again. It's about feeling you failed, but try again. When you try again, your child will try again. When you try again, you teach your child. Not only it's okay to try again, but also you must try again, right? That's how life works. That's how our species works. So find the need behind the wrong stuff that your child has done, and also find the need behind the right things that your child has done, right? Is your child lying to you? Just find out what is it your child is protecting, right? So your child lying to you is valuable data. Please don't miss that opportunity to understand your child better. Finding out what kind of stuff makes your child lie to you gives you a pattern. Until you've understood why your child has lied to you, don't tell them you know that they've lied to you. You best let them tell you they've lied to you. That is the most ideal scenario. Or always get them to, because that tells you the environment is safe enough. You have created a safe enough environment for them to feel safe and tell you they've told you a lie. And sometimes say, I am sorry, I've done that a lot, right? I've told my parents that, yeah, I'm sorry, I've lied to you. And this is the truth, right? Because I was trying to manipulate the outcome. As a child, right? Your children don't lie to you for the fun of it, because there's no fun in lying, because maintaining that lie is something I call mental heavy lifting, right?
It's a burden.
It is a burden. And by the way, the worst kind of burden, because they can't share it with anybody else, right? They can't. I remember some nights when every kid was supposed to go home. There were kids who were like, I'm not going home. I've done something I wasn't supposed to. And my dad is home, and I'll be in trouble. So I'll be in trouble. That means the environment is not safe. I'll be in trouble means I'm going to find an alternative accommodation for the night. That means I'm going to go and stay with a friend whose bigger brother does drugs. Some of my friends ended up in prison because of drugs. How do you think they ended up in prison? Because they supplied drugs. How do you think they ended up supplying drugs? Because They didn't know any better. They were surrounded by drug dealers, and that is how they became. So they became drug dealers. They 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 were groomed into becoming drug dealers, and as adults, they became really good at it as well. Practice makes perfect, doesn't it? So, um, I always there was one of them who really trusted me, and I always asked them, "What makes you think that this stuff that you're selling won't hasn't killed anyone yet?" And he said, "I never think about it." I said, "Why is it that you never think about it?" And he said, "Well, um, I'm gonna go crazy if I think about how many times. Do you know how many dealings I've had so far? Do you know how many people I've dealt so far?" I said, statistically, some of that stuff could have killed someone by now. And he said, "Don't tell me that. I don't want to think about it." So even the wrongins, even people who do wrong, they deal with the consequences inside their heads, right? So so that's the worst case scenario. So of course, a simple lie that your child tells you eats at them from inside, right? It's just it's eating them away. So um, make sure the environment is safe so they won't suffer with the burden of that, uh, with bearing the burden of that lie as well, right? So when they lie to you, they feel extremely uncomfortable because they know they've done wrong. How do you feel when you lie yourself? We all lie. If you tell me you haven't lied in your life, that's your first one. If it's your first, if you've never told a lie before, and you tell me you haven't lied before, that's your lie number one. And if you insist, that's your lie number two, right? So we've all done it. So um, there's no denying it. But keep the environment safe. Then you wouldn't raise a careful liar. Are we raising honest kids or careful liars? I wish you guys a lovely morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. Please share with us what you think, and see you in the next one. Paulette, you're fantastic, by
Bye.
the way. Bye.